enough about me, Mr. Sean. Let's get into your story. You've got quite an interesting one.
It's really, I mean, I think you posted some of the photos. I mean, the two younger photos of me kind of showed I was a fit guy in my younger days, we'll say. So I kind of, I grew up playing American football, martial arts, powerlifting, played a lot of sports, knew my way around the gym for sure, very educated on exercise. And so obviously, what's the question that says you go from a younger fit person to a 260, 65 pound overweight guy, or probably through my 40s. And so I carried that weight for a good 10 years. That's not a fun thing to do. So how do you go from one thing to another is the physiological is obvious. You don't eat right, you don't exercise, you become, very sedentary, that kind of stuff. So there's not much in my mind that's new or innovative in that learning. It's just that's what you do. But it's more the why or the how. Why, as much as anything, is I think we just kind of fall into some psychological thinking that I don't know that society is supposed to teach us, but we either forget. And the core thing is I kind of had some big changes in my life. I was able to manage a lot, as a corporate employee. You kind of know the ground, the lay ground, you know how to manage things, you have your life under control. Around that time, I started my own practice, which is a tax practice, primarily litigation for tax problems here in the U.S., as well as, other tax services. And that's, as you know, it's just like to me, for people out there who start a social media influencing kind of program, you're kind of just figuring it out. And that's just how small business is. So you go to an environment that you don't really have any, I don't say skill set or any kind of vision how you're going to manage it. Everything you think you're going to do doesn't work. So you kind of come to where a lot of things you lose yourself, you lose that life management skill. And the biggest thing is you start to sacrifice, it's considered selfish to sacrifice or to take time to take care of yourself. One of the big things I'm a member of a Mexican-American family. My wife's from Mexico. Food is a huge culture. And it's not just in the sense of eating, it's just almost a sign of love. When my Mexican family wants to communicate with me, it's usually through food.
We're going to need a lot more on that because I'm out here in the UAE. I'm half Arab myself, and that's also a massive part of our culture. Like to turn down your grandmother's cooking, it's almost considered a crime. That's a big no. It's taboo.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. I think it's the same thing in a lot of cultures. It's not just Mexican American, I think, or even Hispanic. You can go to European cultures, you can go to African cultures. I'm sure you're going to have the same thing. Food is just a sign of that passive sign of love. And for me, it's a bit of a long-term trial there or experience that says it's part of the psychology that says we compartmentalize or we set things to ourselves that it's kind of common sense. Is what you put in your own body is your business. And I don't mean it to be so, it's not a confrontational learning. It's more just, yes, you have to accept. I pay the price of what I put in my body. The person who's offering it is not going to be that kind of, have that consequence. So it's not so much that you sit down and educate that person on a one-off conversation and they suddenly accept it, because they're not, especially an older generation person like my mother-in-law. But it happened even with my wife's family and her friends in the area. We have Hispanic friends as well. And so it's kind of that kind of thing. It's, why aren't you eating the food? Why aren't you eating? Are you not hungry? And so the concept there was you kind of have to accept in yourself that there's probably going to be some aspect of, I don't say confrontation, but disappointment in you for saying no. And you have to learn that cultural boundary on how to say it. But over time, as my health changed, that didn't really become as much of an issue. And in fact, I've got younger family members in Mexico who are trying to emulate the behavior. I've got younger family. I got people in the neighborhood who are asking me questions. That's one of the reasons I had to put videos up too. I didn't get much interaction, but on my own YouTube and TikTok, I put this similar information up because I was getting asked, what did you do? What did you do? And now when I go to these gatherings and parties, there's a fruit tray there, or I bring fruit with me. I bring something to the party that I can eat. You kind of bring both. Hey, and so it's kind of like I'm eating the fruit. I brought this, and it kind of balances that a bit. And then, of course, now a lot of wives actually are kind of asking, "What you do, Sean?" Because they want their husbands to lose the weight. And so I think it's not so much that you need to avoid the conflict of the moment and have confidence in that what you're doing is right. And then over time, the vast majority of people will probably get on board, especially if they see the positive outcome that comes with it.
I like that. So what you did is you were able to change a culture towards food and eating, not
Yeah.
culture in terms of ethnic culture, but the approach and how you view food. And I like that you ended up giving some kind of compromise or substitute. I think the idea of bringing in 2 trays where you're still participating, you're not completely shunning them or being antisocial, or I think that's a great way.
You shouldn't go off into a corner and not eat and not participate. I don't know what it is in your culture, but the kitchen is a huge socialization point.
My wife, like, she pretty much put a barrier, and she had a talk with everyone and said, "Listen, guys, he's on a mission." And we were fairly newlywed at the time, so it was not great timing to turn down invitations, especially from in-laws and things like that. They're trying to get to know me, but we were very serious about it. We were focused, and she had my back. So she literally told her mom, "Yeah, he's not coming over for the next few weeks, and don't ask him and leave him alone." And that really did help me. Pretty much completely went very low carb. I was just eating, grilled meat and salads daily. And it kind of went into, okay, he'll come over for coffee. So now I'll drink coffee with them after. And then, okay, he'll come over for a barbecue or a grill, where at least, it's not like heavy rice food and things like that. Until slowly, like you said, they sort of get to know you and respect the process, and they're proud of the outcome, and then they kind of back off a bit.
The key point, I think, is understanding that through the journey, towards the end of that journey, people will respect you more, and then they'll also respect other boundaries that you set in your life as well, to be honest. So it's kind of a longer term, it's okay to set expectations, and it's okay to set reasonable boundaries, and what you eat is reasonable. But I don't think you need to be, and it does depend, because I don't know what your temptation for food was, because I'm a stress eater. I'm going to have that, and ice cream is kind of my big thing, and so I think it's actually a great thing your wife stood up and said, "I'm going to protect." She's looking to help you get healthy. Yeah. And I think that's a hard discussion for a lot of spouses, because here in the West, it's viewed sometimes as you have some kind of superficial standard of beauty or something, but it's a very valid thing to sit down with your spouse and say, you're 40, 50 pounds or more overweight. I'm very concerned about your health. I want to support you. How can I do that? And I think it's kudos to your wife for doing that, because I think that's very unusual.
I've got relatives, cousins, where they struggle. I think their wives are like, they love baking and they love cooking, and it's just like, no matter how hard they try, they end up getting sucked back into that, just because it's such a huge part of their relationship. So in a way, I'm almost lucky that I was able to be selfish almost in that instance.
I would not call it selfish, because here's what I would say is that, and I have a personal, I've got in-laws, my father-in-law passed away, 97, passed away in June.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, yeah, it's sad, but 97, he had a very good long life. So we're happy to have him that long. And my mother-in-law is 87, I want to say, and she has dementia. And so there's a lot of demand for some family members down there to take care of her. And not that you can necessarily know how to avoid that, but I think when it comes to weight and other health issues, that people don't seem to grasp a lot of the health issues in the West, maybe in Dubai as well, are lifestyle. Diabetes and other things are heavily lifestyle, joint pains, things of that. And the more we can, the best gift I think I can give my daughters is not having to take care of me if they can avoid it. And that doesn't mean having a big stack of money sitting someplace for a long-term living care, but it can also mean that I am mobile, I'm cognitively aware, I can take care of myself and take care of things so that I participate in their lives, but I'm not a burden. And so if you look at it from that standpoint, is you're setting yourself up to be healthy, whether it's into your 80s, 90s, whatever, but as long as possible, so that you're not a burden on others. And that's the longer term perspective I think, you need to think of. And I think you've done that. You've lost the weight, you're in good health, and you want to maintain that. Kind of how I look at it, and that's kind of how I explain it to my family, is that I do these things. Now, I don't spend 2 hours in a gym from like 5 to 7 p.m., which I'm not saying that's necessarily bad. I'm at 5 a.m. to 7 p.m. So they're sleeping. There's no disruption in our life. So they really can't say something to me in that regard. You take too much time in the gym. So most of my exercise is before people get up. But the point being is I have that ability. And so I tell my family, I eat this way, I exercise this way so that, I lost 80 pounds, 80 so pounds. And before that, I had, a CPAP machine for sleep apnea. I had blood pressure medicine. I had cholesterol medicine. I had half my thyroid taken out for other reasons. It wasn't weight related stuff. But it didn't, and so I was on some thyroid medicine as well. The weight, all that's gone. And so I'm not dependent on pills or machines at this point in my life. I'm 55. I don't know if your audience would know that or not, but I'm 55. And so I've got friends who are, they've got knee surgeries, 6 knee surgeries. They got 3 rotator cuff surgeries. They got back issues and all that stuff. And it's just, that to me is something you really have to look to avoid as much as you can. Some of the stuff is just a function of what job you do and other things. But if you can avoid and keep your mobility as long as you can, I think it's a huge health advantage as you age.
I like that you're giving this message because I've noticed a lot of my audience, especially on TikTok, they're quite young and they have the privilege of time.
I've got a cousin in California in construction. He's no longer in construction now. His wife is an optometrist and she has her optometry business, so he works in that. But he was telling me he big machines, the graders and other aspects of big machines, that's what he worked on for years. And he would say the older guys told him to not jump off those things. So you get off, you hang off, you jump, all that stuff, because those machines do beat you up. You can be shaking around and have back issues, but the jumping up and down hurt the knees. So 20 years of on those machines going back and forth, the older guys say, use the ladder, step up, use a step stool. 15, 20 years later from now, you're going to be appreciating that. The exercise mentality is more is better. And that is not true. More is not better. There is a resting need, a recovery need. One needs to incorporate into their exercise routine. And that's not well preached, I think.
It aligns with the bodybuilding fundamentals because, a lot of the growth happens during the recovery and rest, not during the actual disruption or the shredding of the muscles or what have you. Yeah. So
when I competed in powerlifting, we would do what's called cycles. And that's part to build to a maximum strength, but also for injury protection. And so you might do 6 weeks at 15 reps and then 6 weeks at 10 reps and 6 weeks at 5 and then 3 and then 1 as you move to a competition. Wow. So you're not doing so much weight and stressing things. But one of the things we also did was negatives. And that kind of goes back to a Mike Menser mentality. If you've ever listened to him, you're doing floor exercises, especially home gym. A negative is a great way to increase load and intensity, or say not load so much, but intensity on your muscles as you're doing, like say, a 5 count lowering on a squat. Do that just one time. You're going to count 1,001, 1,002, 1,003 as you go down to your parallel and come back up. You might find you don't need to do 50 reps. You can do 5 or 6. I don't know. It just depends on the person, and you'll find that there's a much greater intensity put on that muscle group. But it's also safer in my mind too. Yeah. Versus tacking on a lot of weight on the back or whatever.
Even functionality, like to know how to squat and get down to a certain level is important for everyday life. But loading it isn't as applicable. I mean, how often do you need 100 pounds on your back while you do that? So you're getting up and down from a chair hundreds of times a day. And
that does go to my transition was, I started out. It was not like going to a gym because gyms were closed. It was March of 2020. I said, the moment I can see it, I sat in a chair. And this is another thing. Our life got so packed with running around with our kids in band, dance, and other things that we were going in, 8 different directions. I was way too pleasing to client base in my practice and so forth. So, as I said, I wasn't really prioritizing my own health. And then everything shuts down. Schools are online. There's no extracurricular activities. There was literally no excuse. And so one of the hacks that you talk about, I did was, sitting in a chair doesn't fix anything. I can't go wrong walking. And so the perfection is the enemy of the good is I think what a lot of people do. They're looking for the perfect answer when a good answer gets you going. And okay, I'm in a chair, get up and go walk. And so I just started walking, I think 20 minutes. First of all, it's like 20 minutes a day. I think I did that for a couple of weeks until it hit me that, okay, if you look at the whole total energy expenditure, does my body really care if I'm doing the exercise activity or if it's considered, non-daily exercise activity? It doesn't care. It doesn't know the difference if I do it every day or do it throughout the day. So 15 minutes, 3 times a day. So, morning, lunch, and dinner, walk 15 minutes. And just to increase the total energy I was expending versus just, exercise itself, just in that kind of mentality. And so get my mobility, get me up, get me doing something. And then from that, it was just, it was always incremental things I did. There wasn't a plan. It was just, okay, I'm here. What can I do next?
Like you said, incremental improvements, not these drastic changes where you probably would have been more likely just to give up because it was so sudden and so extreme.
It's very hard to argue that you don't have time for a 15-minute walk. And so that's kind of the part that comes into is, could I argue starting out, let's just say the gyms were open, could I argue I don't have time to go do a 2-hour workout?
But the idea is go do something for 5 minutes, and like 99% of the time you'll do another 5-minute workout and another, because that's it. You've kind of broken that chain of laziness. And like you said, it's just so easy. You can say, I can do 5 minutes. On the worst day, I could do 5 minutes.
It gets you a habit that you can make into a lifestyle.
Nice.
So you now have that small incremental change that's easy to implement. You can get up 15 to 30 minutes early to walk or to do your 15-minute workout or whatever. And so that becomes its own habit. And then hopefully you move to, if you're looking for progression in your health and to progress it forward, you'll move that 15 minutes or whatever that small increment is to something a little bit more to add, improve, and progress. And what ends up happening is, people want to run for motivation. They sit and ponder for motivation. And a lot of times, I think motivation or lack of motivation is an indication of lack of confidence in the plan you're going to follow. And so you don't have confidence that you can either be consistent with it. You don't have confidence that it's going to work. But if you literally measure, I started out doing 5-minute workouts and now I'm at a 15. That's a success in of itself that should be celebrated.
That's the first time I've heard motivation linked to lack of confidence. Yeah, if you're not convinced in your own program and in your own abilities, then that's where the motivation can kind of wane. That's really cool.
So I think that's really where if you were to say I'm not motivated, ask yourself, is what I'm doing, can I consistently do to get the results, or is it even the right thing to do? And it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good. And so walking 15 minutes a day is definitely going to make a difference, or doing 5 push-ups a day, or doing a 5-minute workout and incorporating that in your day. And then, of course, you can find the time going from there. I think if you combine that with ability to set expectations and boundaries of others, and it can be, relatives for parties, it can be even kids. No, kids leave me alone for 30 minutes while I do my workout. Those things become valid to do, to make time for yourself to do those things. And you're not asking a lot, especially at 30 minutes. All the diet programs are keto, South Beach, Atkins, those are, you go back, and all kinds of these, do this one thing, and you can still look on social media and find that. And even I fell prey to that because I was always looking for, I fell prey to the easy way. And so I think that becomes a little bit tempting because you don't have confidence that you can do something long term. So if you can make that change into your life, I think you'll avoid and not be tricked by, do this one thing and you'll lose 50 pounds while you sleep. You see those on all the time on I did the South Beach diet and variations of it. And yeah, it works. Absolutely. Because what's doing, it's cutting calories going in. But I was so a loss of energy. I couldn't sustain it. And to me, the hack or the realization that came to me was like I said, I probably didn't have the best diet knowledge. I wasn't horrible in knowledge, but I didn't have the awareness that where I was, let's say pre-March 2020, is I was probably eating 5,000 or 6,000 calories a day. I mean, fajitas, tacos, Mexican food, big Southern breakfast, those things. You don't realize that you're putting 1,000 calories or more on your plate at a meal. And of course, we eat out here in Texas a lot, especially in the Dallas area where I'm at. And restaurants don't give you, diet portions. They're big portions.
Oh yeah. I've had a brisket out there before. It was,
Woo. I was probably very naive as to how much calories was on my plate. So when it hit me that, okay, I'm probably, let's say between 5,000 and 6,000 calories a day eating. And any diet that a dietitian is going to put you on is going to put me down to like 1,800. And I did the Jenny Craig stuff too. That's silver bullet as well. Not that that's bad. I mean, honestly, there's some good to that, but it's hard to eat those foods, in my opinion, and stick on them. And I would lose weight. I'd lose 20 pounds. It's so strict you couldn't stick with it. You'd fall back into your regular diet. Well, if you're going to go from, let's just say 5,000 calories to less than 2, you don't do that from Sunday to Saturday or Saturday to Sunday and changing your diet, because that was always my thing. I got to start on Sunday, start a proper week, whatever, which is really silly. But you would not get up on not running for, 10 years and think you can get up and go run 5 miles on Sunday morning and you went to bed on Saturday in that shape. You'd say, I've got to work into that. So it's the same thing in dieting. My thing I think is lost in the nutrition or diet world is if that's what you're eating, it's a huge mental hurdle, if not physiological, to drop to that many calories in one day or 1 week. So I started, and it wasn't really scientific, but I just took my plate and said, let's cut the portions down by 25%. I'm eating the same food, but I'm cutting it down. And the next week or two later, I didn't cut it down some more. And I did that over, I think, about 2.5 months. And then I said, okay, now let's take this off and put fruit in its place. Something along that nature, something that's more healthy than so my calorie, I kind of trained myself down over about 2 months, and I had exercise and other stuff into it, don't get me wrong. But from the diet perspective, I had to realize that I can't go from 6,000 to less than 2. I got to train down to that. And that's really what I progressively did. And in that process, I then developed eating habits that I could manage. And I learned to teach myself that I could eat, healthier foods. I do typically eat more simple foods, not a lot of processed. I'm not saying one has to do that, but that's just for me. It's easier now. I do count calories, but I didn't then. So it's just replacing the foods and saying, if I eat 500 calories in fruit, so what? I'll live with that, instead of the 250 I'm supposed to eat.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I progressed down on my diet until I started moving into probably 6 months in, I think I started counting calories. But that was kind of the process to do it. It's just to move little by little to lesser calories, smaller portions, and then better foods. And it all depends on where you live in terms of what's budget. I mean, processed foods can be cheaper than the simple foods. I'll be honest with you. Here in the West, they are probably cheaper. So I don't want to say it's so easy monetarily or financially to go unprocessed. It just depends on where you live, to be honest.
Yeah, we're lucky in the UAE actually, because a sack of potatoes, I mean, you can get for a kilogram at 2.2 pounds. Talking about 50 cents for 2.2 pounds, like it's extremely cheap. Like
if you look at things and realize, learning to cook, simple cooking is not that difficult. I mean, you don't have to have, the chef style recipes to simply grill a steak or a fish. I mean, you can take olive oil and some lemon and some other things and marinate a fish fillet, bake it for, whatever amount of time, and it'll taste fine. So that's all a preference. Some of it's a learning, but also preference. But what I think compounded my ability to stick to that kind of diet is being a stress eater. I found that walking, at first was walking, but largely exercise in general, just alleviated the stress, which alleviated my, reaching for ice cream was my weakness. biggest thing were the kind of indulgent foods. And I no longer had that craving because the stress was relieved through exercise.
I need to get you on the Ninja Creamy, by the way. If you,
I watched that, yeah.
If you ever come out here, it's literally like they put skim milk and strawberries in there, and it turns into the most amazing creamy soft serve ice cream.
There's probably 3 or 4 key things that are psychological barriers. An exception to the rules, one of them, and that's in life, not just in health. But probably, exception is the rule. The best way I would do it is kind of like I kind of tell my friends the Chris myth. Chris Bumstead, Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth. All 3 have wonderful physiques, at least as we see them on screen. But those are such exceptional, rare views of what a person can achieve. And you can even argue, do they really achieve it? Because there's a lot of background that puts them there that could be photo editing, special dieting, all these processes they go through. And you can even argue that physique look is not even healthy.
Give me one more mental hurdle or psychological hurdle that you think that probably resonates with quite a few people.
I think compartmentalization is kind of one where that's kind of where logic in one area seems to be correct, and then you take it over to some other areas of your life, and it just doesn't make sense. Or we just we filter something out and like this is the only answer. And I think measuring your health by the scale is a very common compartmentalized way of thinking of health, especially if you're starting your journey out. And so if you're really doing that small incremental change in your life, I think those are measures of success. It says I started going from 5 minutes to 15 minutes on exercise, whatever that is. I started doing 5 push-ups, 3 sets of 5, and now I'm at 3 sets of 15. I mean, those are markers of health improvement. I don't think we talk about it so magnanimously as we do of going from like one weight to a lower weight.
Yeah.
And so the scale to me is, and even just reducing calories, as I said, okay, I looked at this as how much what I used to eat, and this is now what I eat now. That's its own success. That goes back to having confidence in your plan and says you've made progress. And knowing that, okay, I'm gone from 6,000-ish to 4,000 calories. I'm not losing weight necessarily because I need to be under 2, but I've made progress towards that. And so that sets the scale expectation, reality, in a better perspective. So it doesn't mean we discard the scale, but it just becomes more in relative to what it's going to be good for when it should come into play.
Sean, you just said something really good. Like I never thought about that. Slowing down the leak is just as important as stopping it and reversing it.
Yeah.
So like you said, even though you're still potentially in a surplus from going from 6,000 to 4,000, you're still a healthier person and you're moving in the right direction.
Cut your calories by 33, I guess that's 33%, something like that. So, and you're 50% to your goal.
There's nothing wrong with pacing yourself. And that's the problem. I think it really is because it's such a money-making industry that they really do, I think, force you to think that you have to have these quick, drastic results.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's not even worth it. Like, why are you?
Well, you're not going to pay someone. It's very hard to pay someone to say, you help me do 5 minutes of exercise.
True.
It's very hard. And I would say that the health industry, when done right, think about it. If you could avoid diabetes and you could avoid joint pain and arthritis or whatever, well, you'd probably pay someone $25,000 a year and to do that, when you're young, to avoid it. You go, yeah, I'll avoid that health problem. But the reality is, it's something we don't really see in our head that's where we're heading if we have that lifestyle. And I think if you step back and you start listening to a lot of, here you listen to a lot of what about healthcare is and that kind of stuff, you'd think healthcare would be much more about, okay, let's make time for people. Let's give people the time to go to a club and work out. Let's give people time to take time off for that. Let's not do certain things about lifestyle at work. There would be a lot more of that discussion. And to me, a lot of popular media over here does not really push the right kind of lifestyle. But if to the point that you had to go really, really strict for you, and I'm not saying that was wrong, evidently you got the results, but look at the effort your wife had to go to to make that happen.
No, but I had to segue into more realistic approaches eventually. So there was for us, it was very emotional. I still now very frequently rotate between several different methods depending on what's going on.
One of the biggest things to try to teach people younger is that life can't be planned. Things come at you that you can't expect.
Yeah.
Death in the family, an illness you didn't expect, job 100%. Change, all that stuff. And you don't sit there and say on April 15th, this is going to happen and I'm going to get ready for it. It just happens. And so you kind of have to adjust. And so the point I would say is somehow keep health in your lifestyle as you do that. But
wait a minute, April 15th, isn't that a special day?
Well, I guess maybe I'm compartmentalizing too.
Doing tax attorney through and through.
People that don't know, that's the day your taxes are due.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the hurdles. What are some of the main ways then that you combat these issues as they come up?
Being aware of the hurdles, awareness of those things is its own ability.
True.
So if you're really aware of that, those are psychological hurdles. Think of, when you hear someone go, this chemical is in bleach and it's in your soda. Can you believe they let you put this chemical in your soda that's in your bleach? And the chemical's H2O.
Yep. Water.
Water. You go, really, that's a silly logic.
Yeah.
And if you keep that in your head, then every time that comes up on a TikTok video, you're going, okay, this is silly. This is a silly logic. Just because it's and that's the kind of same thing as eat grapefruit and you'll lose weight. You kind of become aware of those things to kick the distraction. But I think the other thing is you start developing if you start seeing the results that happen, through the confidence in your plan and your confidence in your abilities, you become a little bit of immune to every other little thing that comes at you because you're working your plan and it's working for you. So I think you become immune to a lot of those things. When you're not doing those things, I think you feel so desperate. That's how I felt. The keto diet, the Atkins or whatever. They're just, okay, I need to find something versus the more lifestyle process became its own solution.
I think staying consistent on something is really hard because even with exercise, it's similar where if you keep jumping from one program to another or you change, if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's very hard. Yeah. People, I think they get impatient or there's a lot of self-doubt that can creep in, particularly around the plateau because it all happens. We all end up slowing down a bit.
Well, if you have multiple metrics of success, I think you're always going to find something that's progressing forward while others are not.
That goes back to earlier. You were mentioning that. Yeah. So it's not just purely the weight scale or one single metric.
You're 5 reps up on some exercise. You're a few pounds heavier on a weight. You're faster on a walk. You're longer on a walk. You moved from walking to a run. You're able to bike now when you couldn't before. Those are all measures of progress. And
this goes way beyond fitness in general. I mean, this is for life. Like so now, for example, this new podcasting thingy I'm doing, my views aren't blowing up or anything. That I haven't improved that much, but I'm looking at different metrics. So, for example, this is my first time doing a Zoom call now. So I've added something new to my repertoire. Yeah. I realized that the camera was off 90% of the interview. And little things like that.
Well, we'll know if the latter part of the views are higher or lower. We'll know why.
Well, I really hope they're higher. Otherwise, oh man, my self-esteem's already taking a beating. But no, it's just little things like that. So it's just like it doesn't even have to be the direct result you're looking for. It could be learning or picking up or failing even. So you learn through failure just as much or sometimes even more than through success. So it's like, that didn't work. I won't do that again. Great.
Yeah. And I would, I think sometimes, like I said, when it comes to exercise, I don't think the doing is as complicated as we think. I really don't. Yeah. I mean, now, you may get to a point where you got to progress to something else, but I don't think that it's that complicated. And so, and I think that becomes a lot of what's the marketing is. If you want to grow your muscles better, well, that's always the perfection is the eating the good. Your exercise isn't good enough. Mine's better. And so it's just trying to teach you buyer's remorse as to what you're doing in your own world.
Like I always said, you always think that, okay, this might be 80% versus the 50% you're doing. But guess what? 80%, if you never do it, what's 80 times 0? Zero.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
50%, if you're doing it 100% of the time, that's 50. 50 is better
Yeah.
than zero any day of the week.
And I don't know if there's any studies out there that say this, but I think health is, as you're consistent with it, it's kind of like, think of compound interest in the world of personal finance. You get interest on interest on interest. I think you get health increases on health increases.
True.
And so I think that, as you build muscle, your frame is now burning more calories, which will burn more fat. So
True.
it's not
Metabolism goes up.
measurable. Consistency builds greater results over time. More compound versus, I lost half a pound this week and so forth, but I built muscle over 6 months, and now I can lose 2 pounds a week versus a half a pound, that kind of a thing. I just think there's a lot more to that I don't think we know, and you just have to have some confidence in that. But I think that when you take that health, I think you can also stretch it. And I don't want to digress too much, but my practice was in tax. There was a lot of demand from clients, and it was a lot of me be too ingratiating to my clients.
Yeah.
So I was able to get that under control, and the same principle. I'm setting boundaries. I'm setting expectations. I'm setting, requirements, and that came into where now I don't go to work with this huge mental state. I'm actually very happy, very, very much more relaxed in my work life.
And ironically, I bet your customers appreciate you more now, or they're more confident
Absolutely.
in you because,
to be honest, they do. It's much more when you over ingratiate. I think there's not that I think people are necessarily selfish. I think they just become, that's what they think they can expect, and then they don't realize they're not getting service because there's 300 others doing the same thing.
correct.
And you can't service everybody. So
It's a life lesson, guys.
Yeah.
This is a life lesson here. Yeah. Less is more. The better balanced you are mentally, physically, emotionally, you're going to deliver better advice. You're going to be on top of things, less likely to make mistakes. There's a lot of human error, I think, in what you do, especially. So,
if you're in that emergency mode, you're in that emergency thinking. So you're thinking about 40% of what you should be, kind of a thing. You're just kind of crisis mode, firefighting, and that's how you deliver. So,
no, nobody wins in that situation.
No, it's not the best. So if you're going into that kind of work environment, I think that's kind of an opportunity for evaluation there. How do I manage it better? Is it me? Is it the environment? It's a combination of two. Am I handling it well? And there's a lot of opportunity to learn there. That's a whole other podcast, in my honest opinion. Yeah.
You also mentioned martyr syndrome.
Well, that goes back to a little bit of a parenting thing, and that's kind of it's a little bit different, specific, but I'm sure you feel it as a father, as a husband. I'll put my needs aside. I think mothers do this as well. They'll put their needs aside.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And you end up doing that, and too much in life. And so that goes back to setting expectations that allow you to take care of yourself. And on a day-to-day basis, it's very easy to put yourself aside. And in the long run, do you want to be 65 and not be able to play with your grandkids? Or do you want to be, much more active at a certain age? That's where you can participate in the family. So.
And I've been a victim of this myself, definitely, in the past. And it's oftentimes self-imposed. Like your kids, and like my wife is so supportive. And I don't think she's ever been like, no, don't go to the gym. No. It's always like me worrying, oh, maybe she needs me. Maybe the kids need me around. Maybe, and it really is self-imposed. You know what I mean? Like you're trying to find an excuse to block yourself, but they know. Like every time I'm home, they can tell my mood is completely shift. My energy levels are through the roof.
Yeah.
There's a big. I'm a different person when I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And instead of this like kind of zombie, pathetic sort of self-pitying,
self-esteem. Your self-esteem goes down, quite honestly.
Of course.
Even if your parents doesn't, I think your self-esteem does go down over time with that kind of lack of outlet, physiologically and psychologically. Because I think psychologically, I definitely, even my wife says she's kind of picked up some of the habits too, because she did not grow up in Mexico with an exercise health mentality. It's not part of her culture naturally. And so even when we go visit, I got into the bands at home. During the pandemic, I bought all these bands off Amazon. And so I take them with me if we go to Mexico. So I have something to work out with, because there's not the same gym level there as there is here.
Yeah.
But, I always encourage you got to make time for the walks, watch the diet, all this stuff. I'm very supportive of it. So it's it's definitely a cultural thing. And this doesn't span all cultures. But you definitely have to, I think that there's definitely an effort in a marriage to say, I support that you need to take time for yourself health wise.
Like what's something that you could pretty much eat all day, every day?
I still eat eggs, scrambled eggs. I eat, I don't necessarily eat the pancakes as often, but it's all portion control at this point in time. And so I don't necessarily pour a bunch of syrup on something. So I can take a knife and just spread syrup on there and get the flavor.
Yeah.
That's my choice. I'm not telling what anyone has to do. And a lot of restaurants, even in Texas, will have some kind of dietary, if you really feel you need to, egg whites versus eggs, whole eggs. But
a couple substitutions. Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that, some of that stuff if you want. So, but yeah. So I can eat breakfast food every meal. That's just who I am.
Same here, but I get into a bit of a fight with my wife on this issue because she loves going out for breakfast, but I like cooking my own breakfast because it's usually kind of like steak, eggs, whatever. So it's stuff I can make on my own. So I'm like, well, if we're gonna go out, I want to go somewhere I want to get like Mexican food or something where it's harder. We won't cook it every day, right? We won't see it. While eggs, I pretty much can make it on my own. So. We always get into this with each other because, she's also a big breakfast food lover, and then I'm more of an evening guy. So there's a lot of things. Look, Sean, I really appreciate your time today.
I'm glad to have done it.
I'm sure it'll I'm sure instigate some future conversations. If you come up with anything else profound, I love the psychology side of things.
I think that's so understated in the fitness world, to be honest. So
yeah. I agree because like I said, like for me, even until I made it up here, I knew also, I came from we've got a visitor here. Hello.
Yeah.
What's up, Kid Fit? Come say hi to Uncle Sean. Look, she's wearing like overalls. Is that a bit of a Texas vibe?
Yeah. Ready to go out there on the farm, the ranch.
Her grandfather, my dad's got 17 acres in Florida. And
I think you told me that.
Yeah, so she went in and she was trying to dig up stump.
Okay.
And so she came back. She's like, I'm gonna be a farmer when I grow up. I'm a farm girl. She was literally there for like 3 minutes outside, but now all of a sudden she's like, yeah, I need some boots. I'm a farm girl. Thank you so much, Sean. Have a great day.
Welcome.
It's the evening for us, and it's the day for you. And we're about to do bedtime routine with the baby now.
All right. Well, stay in touch, Amon.
Hello.
Take care.